Searching for peace of mind, the final resting place for unidentified migrants, the technology that may help families find out what happened to them.
It boosted me up, and I felt all this rush. I felt this, like I could do stuff, right? I mean, like if I was stronger, faster, and everything.
Sometimes it takes just one hit. Another look at the meth epidemic and how it is straining our criminal justice system.
Looking back at something at the end of the day and saying, I built that, like I helped build that, that's always going to be there.
Letting them hammer away, the summer camp that allows girls to explore careers in construction. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amita Sharma. Radioactive waste from the now shuttered Onofre nuclear power plant might not be buried just feet away from the ocean after all. Governor Jerry Brown and state lawmakers reached a deal this week to reform the California Public Utilities Commission. Included in the proposed changes is an order to speed up the relocation of Onofre's spent fuel to an independent storage site. Consumer lawyer Micah Geary had sued the California Coastal Commission for approving a permit allowing Southern California Edison to bury the waste near the shoreline. He hailed the agreement.
When you're storing radioactive waste that's going to last tens of thousands of years, it's imperative that you get the first storage site right.
An Edison spokeswoman says the company is reviewing their proposal. The state legislature still has to approve the pact before the reform plan is put in place. State regulators may drop objections to California's last nuclear power plant in return for its promise to close early. PG&E and environmental groups announced a deal last week to close Diablo Canyon in 9 years. Now, the State Lands Commission will consider foregoing an environmental review before renewing a contract with the utility. San Diego County leaders are moving to provide relief to victims of the destructive border fire in East County. The San Diego County Board of Supervisors today unanimously approved a plan that directs staff to distribute trash bins to residents who need to clear debris. The plan also waives fees for various permits that will be needed in the rebuilding process. The blaze broke out 10 days ago near Potrero. It destroyed 5 homes and 11 outbuildings. The fire is now 92% contained. Pay raises are on the way for emergency dispatchers in San Diego. KPBS reporter Steve Walsh says the move is seen as a boost to an agency which is struggling to handle the influx of emergency calls.
The city has known about shortages in its dispatch centers for some time. The problem was highlighted this spring when the couple drove their newborn to the hospital after it was bitten by a dog when they couldn't get through to 911.
Our current dispatchers have been burdened with mandatory overtime for years as the city has struggled to recruit and retain additional dispatchers, and I'm hopeful this new agreement will help address some of the issues we've had.
Under the plan, dispatchers receive a 15% raise in stages. The first of 3 5% raises goes into effect Friday. San Diego dispatchers handle 1.3 million calls annually. Police Chief Shelley Zimmerman says 911 call times are improving. The average call was answered within 8 seconds last week. The council voted 7-1 in favor of the increases. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Authorities are investigating a suicide bombing attack at Istanbul's international airport that left at least 30 people dead today. Investigators say attackers blew themselves up before entering the X-ray security checkpoint. There were also reports of gunfire inside the international terminal. Paramedics treated at least 60 others as hundreds of passengers ran away from the airport. The attacks come on the heels of a State Department warning yesterday. Department heads advised U.S. citizens to avoid traveling to southeastern Turkey because of more threats from terrorist groups. Lawyers for Joaquin El Chapo Guzman are fighting against his extradition to the U.S. They say they've filed 2 appeals to keep the Mexican drug lord in Mexico. They're arguing that the statute of limitations has run out on some crimes that Guzman is accused of. Guzman's lawyers say the appeals were filed late Monday and could take as long as 3 years to resolve. Guzman was arrested in January after almost 6 months on the run following his escape from a maximum security prison. He had already escaped once before in 2001 and spent more than a decade as one of the world's most wanted fugitives until he was recaptured in 2014. Immigrant rights activists are pushing for DNA samples to be taken from hundreds of unidentified migrants buried in Imperial County. KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero visited the cemeteries to learn more.
More than 200 unidentified bodies are buried at Terrace Park Cemetery beneath bricks labeled John and Jane Doe. Many were migrants who died of dehydration and heat exhaustion while crossing the desert from Mexico. Somewhere, their friends and families may still be wondering what happened to them. Immigrant rights activists visit the cemetery to pay their respects with memorial crosses and prayers.
Lord, you are the giver.
Recently, a group of medical students from UC Irvine made the trip. The students are interested in treating marginalized groups, especially low-income Latinos. One student, David Bustillo, planted a cross on one of the graves while thinking about his parents. Bustillo is the son of Cuban refugees.
Because fortunately, they survived their migration over here, and I was kind of thinking, what if, they weren't as fortunate?
Unidentified migrants are no longer buried at Terrace Park Cemetery when they're found in the desert. Instead, the county cremates those bodies and scatters the ashes at sea. Border Angels founder Enrique Morones says that's a problem. The relatives of people who were cremated will never get closure, he argues. For years, he's been pushing for DNA samples to be taken at this cemetery to give peace to the families of missing migrants.
It's so important for people to find out what happened to my loved one. Are they alive? Are they detained? What happened? And if they're cremated, we will never know.
So far, Morona says nobody's expressed interest in paying for those studies.
Because regardless of which country they're from, they're all the same race, the human race. And their relatives and loved ones want to know what happened to them. And we owe it to them. We owe it to these people.
At nearby Evergreen Cemetery, more than 300 unidentified bodies are similarly buried beneath bricks. When that gravesite became full, the county turned to Terrace Park.
That even here, in death, they're marginalized. They don't get grass or a headstone or flowers besides when we come out here.
Alongside the migrants are the graves of people whose relatives couldn't afford a burial. More than 40,000 people have been reported missing in Mexico, kidnapped, or vanished somewhere near the border with the U.S. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
The Salton Sea will be getting an influx of cash. The state budget that California Governor Jerry Brown signed yesterday allocated more than $80 million for restoration of the state's largest and most troubled lake. That's the most California has ever dedicated to the Salton Sea, though short of the estimated $2.5 billion it would take to complete the project. The Salton Sea is 100 miles east of the San Diego region, and it relies on runoff from nearby farms. A water transfer agreement that takes effect next year will divert water from the lake, which will shrink it and increase the amount of dust in the area. The San Diego County Board of Supervisors approved a 2-year operational plan today, which includes a spending plan for the upcoming fiscal year. The 2016-17 budget is $5.36 billion, slightly higher than what was first proposed. County documents show an increase of $59 million for behavioral health services and additional hires, mostly in public safety and the Health and Human Services Agency. City leaders announced a collaboration today that they hope will help strengthen the innovation economy in San Diego. The new partnership between UC San Diego Extension and the Downtown San Diego Partnership is called Collaboratory for Downtown Innovation, or CDI. Its aim is to connect potential employees with the startup companies that need them. One way is to train local young people for tech jobs.
Look, if you've never thought about coding and you're in high school, it's a language. Maybe it's something you'd like. And so we're going to offer a coding academy to students that might not ever be offered it.
There are more than 100 tech startups based in downtown. Funding for CDI came from foundations and private donors. It will be housed within the offices of the Downtown Partnership. Methamphetamine is a powerful stimulant that's highly addictive and extremely dangerous. It's the drug of choice for many criminals in San Diego. In this second installation of our series on meth, KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg takes a look at how meth abuse is straining the criminal justice system.
Jose Escobedo got his first taste of methamphetamine when he was 11.
I was offered to smoke. I mean, and I didn't know nothing of it, and I'm just trying to fit in with these guys. And I took a first hit of smoke off some aluminum, and once I did that, it was like a whole totally took me to another world.
For Escobedo, one hit was all it took.
It boosted me up, and I felt all this rush. I felt this, like I could do stuff. Right? I mean, like if I was stronger, faster, and everything. And then we walked out, and then I started hallucinating, seeing things.
Escobedo moved in with a dealer. In exchange for running drugs, Escobedo had a non-stop supply of meth at his fingertips.
I would just stay drugged out, for weeks, and I would sleep for a week straight. After 3 weeks of staying up, I was 11. Started smoking drugs, smoking.
Eventually, Escobedo began committing crimes to support his habit. He spent 4 stretches in prison. When Escobedo first started using more than 20 years ago, most of the meth in San Diego came from makeshift labs. Many of them were in East County. These days, it's a totally different story. The methamphetamine on San Diego streets today is largely produced in Mexican super labs controlled by the drug cartels. And how does it get here? A lot of it is smuggled through the nation's busiest land border crossing in San Isidro. An estimated 60,000 cars and 30,000 pedestrians cross here every day. Sidney Aki directs the U.S. Customs and Border Protection at the San Isidro Port of Entry. His agents have found meth hidden in virtually every part of a vehicle, from the trunk to the battery. They've even discovered liquid meth in gas tanks. And pedestrians get a load of this.
It was a female. She actually had a brassiere formed out of narcotics and actually used as a brassiere walking across our border.
In 2010, customs agents seized just over 2,500 kilos of meth at the San Isidro border crossing. In 2014, they captured more than 5,800 kilos. Here's another way to look at it. One hit of meth is about 1/4 gram. 5,800 kilos equals 5,800,000 hits. That's how much was confiscated. Nobody knows how much is getting in. And here's where it gets really scary. The methamphetamine that's coming across from Mexico is stronger than ever, and the price on the street is lower than ever. That's a perfect recipe for more meth use and more meth-related problems. In fact, San Diego jails are filled with meth users. The San Diego Association of Governments says in 2014, 53% of women who were arrested and 40% of men tested positive for meth.
Very important right here.
Cindy Burke is Sandag's Director of Research.
We find that on average, arrestees report that they've been using meth for about 16 years. It really does have a devastating effect. We know that they use it for about 5 days at a time, that they're using 1 gram. Many of them smoke it. About 1 in 4 report that they've injected it.
Besides U.S. Customs, a number of other players are involved in the fight against meth. These include the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, local DAs, and the Federal Justice Department. But Laura Duffy, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of California, says they're not the only ones who need to step up.
We are not going to be able to tackle this problem through law enforcement efforts alone. This is a community problem. This is a health epidemic problem that we all need to come together and put resources towards.
Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
Tomorrow, we'll take a look at a unique program that's helping meth addicts clean up their act. A warning before you buy. Consumer watchdog World Against Toys Causing Harm has released its annual summer toy safety report. Toy guns, kiddie pools, hoverboards, and backyard trampolines have made the list of hazardous summer toys. Watch officials say the summer months account for nearly half of all injury-related deaths to children. They also say more than 2.5 million children are injured in accidents each summer. California fire officials are taking safety precautions for this year's 4th of July. Officials say illegal fireworks from other states often cause wildfires. That's why traffic stops have been implemented along the border to prevent their entry into the state. Authorities are looking for rockets, anything that moves along the ground, and firecrackers. Legal fireworks like sparklers, smoke balls, and fountain fireworks go on sale today in about 300 communities in the state.
In the past 5 years, across California, firefighters have battled over 2,500 structure and wildfires. There have been dozens of injuries, medical emergencies, and millions of dollars in property damage, all caused by fireworks. So this 4th of July, people have to take that extra precaution.
California has a zero-tolerance policy against illegal fireworks. Officials say residents can pay hefty fines and even spend time in jail if they are in possession of illegal fireworks. San Diego is expected to get a break from the heat this week. The desert areas will remain in the triple digits, but with lower temperatures. Heather Waldman has more in tonight's KPBS weather report.
Well, during the summer months, ample waves of moisture move right up through the mountains of central and northern Mexico into the Four Corners. And some of that moisture spills into parts of southern Nevada and maybe parts of central California as well. We'll be seeing a few clouds from that moisture, but all the wet weather is going to stay well off to our east for the time being. Meanwhile, inland, it's going to be very, very warm. Satellite and radar showing a few of those storms here this afternoon, some of them reaching the Vegas area. There's a couple little blips on the radar there, well to the north of Los Angeles, but the air at the surface is so dry that really nothing is reaching the ground, so those showers being picked up very high in the sky, but no wet weather to be concerned about anytime soon. Temperatures tonight, upper 50s to upper 60s from the mountains all the way down towards the coast. San Diego, of course, one of the warmer spots at 68 degrees. We'll stay close to 80, though, in Borrego Springs. The farther east you go out into the deserts, the milder it's going to be overnight. And, of course, during the day, too, high pressure sitting right over the Great Basin, pumping in plenty of warm air to Salt Lake City, Reno, Vegas. Some of that warmth will reach the California coast, but, of course, that area, we've got the benefit of at least a little bit of a breeze off the Pacific to keep the temperatures in check, at least a little bit more comfortable. The last couple of days have been great beach days. It looks like the next few will be as well. Here's that 5-day for the coast. On the warm side tomorrow, we'll get to 81 degrees after some morning clouds. In fact, that marine layer, it's going to be a feature the next several days, but we'll see more sunshine later on in the afternoon, although by the end of this week, that marine layer may be a little bit tougher. The clouds hang on longer and the temperatures stay lower into the lower 70s, but still some great afternoons ahead of us in coastal areas. Farther inland, some of those clouds may creep a little bit farther inland, especially towards the end of the week. Certainly could be some patchy fog any day, but afternoons will be filled with bright sunshine. Temperatures go from the low 80s tomorrow to the middle 70s all the way through this weekend. Beautiful holiday weekend coming up here all throughout the region. Into the mountains, of course, a bit warmer. Temperatures close to 90 degrees Wednesday, middle 80s. As we go through the rest of this week, bright sunshine throughout the area. Those clouds, they don't make it this far inland, and that monsoonal moisture, it's not going to make it this far to the west. So we're in between two little mini climates there. The desert's steamy. 110 on Wednesday, well above the triple digits again Thursday and Friday, although the temperatures start to moderate at least a little bit by this weekend. Even overnight lows, a little bit more comfortable, mid-60s there Saturday and Sunday nights. So fireworks in the area, hey, it's looking good Sunday night and likely on Monday too. Heather Waldman, KPBS News.
Stocks ended the trading day solidly higher following a 2-day slide triggered by Britain's vote to leave the European Union. Energy stocks made some of the biggest gains thanks to an increase in the price of crude oil. The Dow gained 269 points, the S&P ended up with 35 points, and the Nasdaq climbed 97 points. Worries remain after Brexit. President Obama is calling for people to calm down. In a one-on-one interview with NPR's Steve Inskeep, the president says he doesn't anticipate a huge change after the vote.
A couple of follow-ups, one on each side of the Atlantic. Is there a danger that Europe, after this Brexit vote, will turn inward, focus increasingly on its own problems and its own turmoil, and be less active in the world?
Well, I think that the best way to think about this is a pause button has been pressed on the project of full European integration. I would not overstate it. There's been a little bit of hysteria post-Brexit vote, as if somehow NATO's gone and the transatlantic alliance is dissolving and every country is rushing off to its own corner. That's not what's happening. What's happening is that you had a European project that was probably moving faster and without as much consensus as it should have. You have a monetary union, although England wasn't a part of that, that was always going to be difficult to manage because the economy in Germany is very different than the economy in Italy or Greece. And you have a European Union government in Brussels that, because it needs consensus from, more than a couple dozen countries, oftentimes seems overly bureaucratic and deadlocked. And I think this will be a moment in which all of Europe says, all right, let's take a breath and let's figure out how do we maintain some of our national identities, how do we preserve the benefits of integration, and how do we deal with some of the frustrations that our own voters are feeling. But the basic core values of Europe, the tenets of liberal market-based democracies, those aren't changing. The interests that we have in common with Europe remain the same, and our concerns internationally are the same. So Europe can't afford to turn inward. They're going to have to worry about working with us on the Middle East. They're going to have to worry about us working together to deal with an aggressive Russia. They're going to have to deal with us with respect to how do we continue to uphold international rules and norms around the world that have served both the U.S. and Europe very well. And so I don't anticipate that there's going to be major cataclysmic changes as a consequence of this. Keep in mind that Norway is not a member of the European Union, but Norway is one of our closest allies. They align themselves on almost every issue with Europe and us. They are a place that is continually supporting the kinds of initiatives internationally that we support. And if over the course of what is going to be at least a 2-year negotiation between England and Europe, Great Britain ends up being affiliated to Europe like Norway is, the average person is not going to notice a big change.
During her 38-year career in Tennessee, Coach Pat Summitt helped boost women's college basketball to the big league. She died today at age 64. AP reporter Emily Roseman has this remembrance.
Pat Summitt, the winningest coach in Division I college basketball history, has died at age 64 after a battle with early-onset dementia. Summitt uplifted the women's game from obscurity to national prominence during her 38-year career by leading the Lady Vols of Tennessee to 8 national championships. Summitt's son, Tyler, issued a statement Tuesday morning saying his mother died peacefully in Knoxville, surrounded by those who loved her most. Summitt's career helped grow college women's basketball as the Lady Vols dominated the sport in the late 1980s, taking Summitt to 18 NCAA Final Four appearances. Summitt announced in 2011 at age 59 that she had been diagnosed with early-onset dementia, Alzheimer type, coaching one more season before stepping down.
It's never a good time, but you have to find the time that you think is the right time, and that is now.
A tough taskmaster with an intimate relationship with her players that called her Pat. Summitt called her coaching career, quote, a great ride. Emily Roseman, Associated Press.
I'm Gwen Eiffel on the next News Hour. As the Supreme Court term ends, Judy Woodruff sits down with retiring Solicitor General Donald Verrilli. That's Tuesday on the PBS News Hour.
Forget about roasting s'mores and macaroni art. There's a summer camp in San Diego that's teaching girls the building blocks of a new career. The National Association for Women in Construction are the camp leaders today at Kearney High School. Video journalist Chris Arciaga introduces us to students who are learning their way around buzzsaws and hammers.
He told us to cut it on the side of the line.
Okay, just making sure.
Yes, we're good. This year we're building a shed for the preschool so they could put all their little tricycles and all their stuff. We're doing floor framing, wall framing, painting, and then we're going to put it all together. This camp is to not only give girls the skills of construction fields, but also make them feel that they're empowered. Because construction, if you may know, it's like a man's field, but we're here to teach them that women can do anything that men can do. My first year, I learned about plumbing, electrical, tile working, and it really shows like the different skills. And it's not only skills you do on the job site, it's skills you take home with you and do at your house. All right, that's good. You have to have that mindset of yes, you can do it, and yes, you will do it. Now I know that if I want to do something, I'm gonna do it. There's no field now that it's just men field. There's fields are for women too. 1, 2, 3. This is the best feeling, knowing that looking back at something at the end of the day and saying, I built that, like I helped build that, that's always going to be there.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us and have a great evening.